So, I remember it being a Saturday, although my wife, she said it was a Sunday. The sun was shining, but she said it was raining. I was in Debenhams, but she said I was in Tesco. Well, there comes a point in life where you just stop arguing with the wife, because she's always right, and that's what I think. But this is what happened. I always go to this same place on a Saturday. Been doing it for years and years and years. And on this occasion, and it's just in town, it's kind of where I live. I live in an apartment in the middle of Nottingham, and I just come walk into Nottingham. And I've been doing this for years. I go into the store, I know people in there. And suddenly, as I was walking around, I kind of got this feeling, something was happening. I got this feeling inside that it was a bit like when you're feeling anxious, when you're feeling a little bit frightened. You get this certain feeling, don't you? Well, I had this feeling. And then suddenly, I kind of didn't recognise where I was. And all I wanted to do was get out of that building. I just wanted to get out of that shop, out of that store. And I couldn't find my way. And some people were saying, hey Dan, how are you? How am I? Who are you? How do you know me? How do you know who I am? How do you know my name? I need to get out of here. I've got to go home. I want to go home. I've got to get out of here. But I couldn't find my way, and I was getting more and more nervous and beginning to get more and more panicky. So eventually I managed to find myself out. I managed to find my way out of the building. And I got outside, and I just didn't know where I was, and it was so scary. I was absolutely terrified, and I didn't know where I was. And I was asking for people and shouting for people, and I wanted people to help me, and nobody helped me. Everybody was moving away from me. Everybody was kind of scared about me, and I was just sat on the floor, and I was almost crying. In fact, I did start crying because I didn't know where I was, and I was so scared. And I didn't know where I was going, what I had to do. And then a policeman came. And he picked me up off the ground, and he kind of took me away and put me in the car. And I didn't know why he was putting me in the car, because he didn't say anything to me. But after a little while, I kind of began to recognise and to notice that everything was okay. Everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. And things started to come back to me, and he was asking me questions about, what's your name? Where do you live? What's happening? What's going on? What's wrong with you? And I was able to tell him where my apartment was. And he took me there, he took me back to my apartment, and kind of things started to become a bit clearer for me again. So I went into my apartment, and I sat down on my chair, and I was kind of relieved. I still had that feeling that I couldn't explain, I couldn't recognise, I couldn't really express it. And every Saturday night, I go out and I have a drink, and I go for a pizza or something like that with friends that I've known for years and years and years. And I sat in that chair and I said to myself, I'm not going out tonight. Because what if the police, what if I forget again? What if I forget the names of my friends that I've known forever? What happens then? What happens if I'm trying to make my way home and I forget and the police have to get me again? That's how embarrassing and frightening and scary, especially if I can't remember where I am, and it's a Saturday night and it's Nottingham and they're going to take me to the police station. So I'm going to stay in. I'm not going to go out anyway. I'm going to stay in. Go away! Can you see that? Have you seen them? Look at them. I'm sick of them. They're always there telling me what to do. Go away! I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to stay in. I want my mum. You're my mum, aren't you? Mm-hmm. Oh, Mum, I need a hug. I need a hug. I need a hug. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen?
You'll be fine. You will be fine. Everything's all right.
I'm scared.
I know.
You're frightened.
You're safe.
And you know, what about my job? I have a job, but what if I go to work and I forget my job? They're going to know there's something wrong, aren't they? They're going to know there's something wrong, and they'll send me home. I'm just going to stay. I'm just going to stay here. I'm not going there. Right, out of character. From Dennis to me. There you go. Awesome. We think we know a lot about dementia. We think we know how it impacts on people. And there are lots and lots of different types of dementia. We've got over 100 types of dementia. Everybody seems to think dementia is Alzheimer's disease. Everybody seems to think, or they think Alzheimer's disease and dementia. They think they're two different things. But of course they're not. But it doesn't matter what kind of dementia an individual is living with, whether it's Alzheimer's disease, whether it's vascular dementia, or any other form of dementia-type illness. There are two fuels that feed all the symptoms, all the things that we express when we're living with let's just say Alzheimer's disease. So whilst we're living with Alzheimer's disease, the symptoms, the way that we present, the way that we deal with situations and circumstances are all fed by two fuels. And apart from the people who I know in this room that work in the field of dementia, so this question isn't for you, this question is for other people, what two fuels do you think are responsible for feeding those symptoms?
Fear.
Fear? Unknown? The unknown? It's in there, yeah? What often goes with fear? Anxiety. So fear and anxiety are the most important things to think about when we are supporting somebody who is living with a form of dementia. Fear and anxiety. If we can find ways and strategies to dampen down the fear and the anxiety, we go a long way to changing the symptoms, to changing the quality of life of people. So how do we do that? What are some of the ways we can do that? So just put yourself into a situation where you had a very frightening experience. You don't need to share it, just think about it yourself. Think about the fact that you may have had a car accident that came very close. So any other situation or circumstance where you felt really, really frightened. And then think about how that made you feel and how you actually dealt with it and the resources that you used to overcome it or to work through it. Now, if we've got a cognitive change, a cognitive impairment, if we've got a dementia-type illness, things change a little bit because we don't always have those same resources, whether they're cognitive resources or people around us or whatever it is. Sometimes we don't have that ability. and those resources. So sometimes we live in this circle of this perpetual fear and anxiety. If you wake up in the morning and you don't recognise your environment, where you are, is that frightening?
Yeah.
If you wake up next to somebody who you've been living with or married to for 40, 50 years and you don't recognise that person, what would that be like? That's just two situations where fear and anxiety will just go through the roof, and throughout the course of the day it will continue to build. What we have to do is try and tap into that person's world. Everybody's different, everybody's individual, everybody's unique. So if everyone in this room had a form of cognitive change, a form of dementia, we would all deal with it in different ways, and we would all be affected in different ways. The symptoms might be the same, but how we deal with them will be different. And our perspective on life and our mindset changes how we perceive and deal with those situations. So we have a responsibility to tap into that person's world, step inside that world. And it can be very difficult, and it can be very emotional, and it can be very emotionally draining, and it can be very challenging. But it can also be very rewarding, and it can give us a better perspective on what that person is living with. And if we've got that, then we can help that person turn it around. We can change it. Because we've got a whole set of... Can you see fear and anxiety? Can you see it? No? Can you see that chair?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I know that chair's there, and I can just move it to the other side, or do whatever I want with it. With fear and anxiety, we can't see it, so it has no life of its own. It has to be fed, it has to be given nutrition in order for it to grow, in order for it to thrive, and in order for it to be alive, and in order for it to take control of somebody's life. Fear and anxiety has to be fed. And we feed it through negative thoughts, negative emotions, negative belief systems. Well, if we can change that around, and there are many, many, many ways in which we can do that, and very simple ways in which we can do that, then that makes a massive difference to that person. And of course, one of the things is really listening, actively listening, and picking up on the cues of that person. Verbal communication accounts for about 27% of our interactions with each other. 27% we rely on verbal communication. So that means a massive 73% is non-verbal. A massive 73% is all about body language. So on a subconscious level, you can all look at each other now, and your mind, your brain, your subconscious knows what the other person is thinking, and what the other person may well do next. So if we can tune into that and bring it from the subconscious level to the conscious level, then we have a better understanding of what that person is experiencing. We can read body language and interpret it, and use those interpretations to make a difference, to make sure that our fear and anxiety is brought down. So what are some of the things that you think you can do? Simple, easy things to help somebody change from living this life of fear and anxiety, which fuels their dementia, in order to take them and shift it to a place that we call rementia, which is all about giving back some of the cognitive losses and stuff. What kind of things can we do?
Lifestyle change, find out what makes them tick.
Okay, yeah,
Maybe.
absolutely. How do we do that?
Make them feel safe, keep the familiar surroundings.
I'm in good company.
Okay.
So a lot of people have empathy then, which will understand what's going on.
Don't argue with them.
What do you say?
Don't,
Yeah, well,
don't contradict them or
That's right.
correct
Yeah.
them.
What-
yes.
kindness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't judge.
Yeah. As you can see, I have a sense of humour. And a sense of humour is really, really important. Very, very important. I work in America with Barrow Neurological Institute, and at Barrow Neurological Institute we have a centre called the Muhammad Ali Centre that was funded by Muhammad Ali, Evel Knievel's son, and some other people. At the Muhammad Ali Centre, there are many, many people that go there, and the neurologists, the neurological team, the psychiatric team, everybody has a different perspective on how to work with those guys. It's not, okay, let's prescribe this medication. There's a different way of doing things, and this is one of them. You know, it's about getting into that person's life and really finding out what makes them tick and what makes them sick. Because a lot of the illnesses and disease, and as we know, you know, this event is all about different approaches and techniques. So as we know, a lot of people, they present with illnesses and diseases that are preventable. And there is no medication prescribed, there is no medication licensed in the US for treating the behavioural and psychological symptoms of dementia. The only drug licensed in the UK to treat those symptoms is called Risperdal. Nothing else is licensed. We have no cure for the primary dementias. So we really have to think about how we can, number one, prevent or reduce our risks greatly of developing dementia in the first place. And as more and more research has demonstrated, we can do that because dementia seems to, Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia, which are the top two, they're linked. Those two diseases are linked. And as we know from research, recent research now, we can do things to reduce our risks of those. And that's another subject on its own. So there are things we can do about that, preventing our risk. And that's all about lifestyle and diet and that kind of stuff. But when somebody's actually developed that disease, that illness, whatever you want to call it, disability, whatever term you use, then these are the techniques and these are the approaches that we need to adopt in order to improve the quality of life of somebody and reduce their symptoms. Because when you tell somebody you have Alzheimer's disease, the way that it affects them and impacts on them isn't good. Because it's not usually delivered in a truly person-centered way. You know, it can be cold, it can be hard, it can be harsh, and that's it. So I think we have to think about that. And where sense of humour comes in, this is where I was going with sense of humour, I think it's really important that we recognise that people are still human, and having dementia is just a small part of who they are. It's not going to make who they are, it is a small part of who they are. They don't have to become anything other than whoever you are. Why should it change you? It's the perception of the other people that changes you. And how we believe you can't drive anymore, you can't cook anymore, you can't do this, you can't do that. Which is why what we're seeing now in terms of dementia care are what are called dementia villages. There are a couple in America, started off in Holland, but a couple in America, and now America will just they'll be everywhere within the next couple of years. Got a few here in the UK starting up. And I think that is a really good belief system, that we can all work together, we can all live together, we can all interact together, and you can live in your own village safely. All we have to do in order for that, because we all live in a village, we all live in a town, we all live in something, so everything about dementia becomes a journey, and we are on that journey with that individual. So as soon as we meet somebody, as soon as they come into our life, They step into our life because they become a patient or a client, or because they're a family member or a friend, then we're on that journey with them. And if there's many, many people on the journey together, then it makes that journey a lot more interesting, a lot more enjoyable, and a lot more exciting, and a lot less heartbreaking, and a lot less difficult for everybody concerned. So I think it's all about changing mindset. I think it's all about really getting into the life of the person who is living with that cognitive change. And it's things we've been kind of doing. The UK are quite advanced when you compare it to America. The dementia care situation in America is not like we are here. And I was just reading the other day about the first dementia-friendly ambulance service starting up in Leicester. So that's nice, because it changed the internal workings of the ambulance to make it more dementia-friendly. And all the staff have been trained to communicate better with people. So there's lots of things happening here, and I kind of think, I look from the outside, from America, and think, that's great, they're doing okay. But I think people in the UK think it's not as good as it should be or could be. If we compare it to America, it's in a good place, dementia care here, and the strategies and the things that we do. So humour is very, very important. Always enjoy having fun with people. Never let them lose this sense of humour. One of the first things that I do with a patient when they come into clinic, we sit down, and the first thing I do is ask them to tell me a joke. Or what is the funniest story you've heard today? Or what's made you laugh this week? When it comes to using hypnosis, you can do that in 2 minutes. You can sit somebody down, ask them to close their eyes, take some deep breaths, and once they've done that, they've relaxed a little bit, and ask them to tell you a funny story. It's really good. You can see the anxiety drain away, and you can see that everything's going to be okay with this consult, because this guy's a nutcase. Yeah. So that's just my perspective on supporting somebody who is living with dementia, and how we can be more positive rather than negative. It's no longer a life sentence. There are things we can do. There's a lot of stuff we can do to address the challenges that people are living with, and by focusing on the positives, focusing on the strengths, and focusing on what you can do, and celebrating the things that you can still do, the things that you can still enjoy, is just, my motto is, turn a frown into a smile, and it's been a good day. So that's all you need to do, isn't it? Smile at somebody and say hi, how are you, everything okay?
Infectious.
Isn't it? I'll just tell you, have I got 2 minutes to finish this? I've got 5 minutes? Oh, sweet.
Don't tell him that.
Yeah. So I go into a nursing home in Phoenix, and I go to see a patient, and it's really busy. And at the nurses' station, there's a doctor gone to visit a patient, there's the nurses milling around. We have social workers based in nursing homes over there. The social worker was there, the occupational therapist was there, the care staff were there, and what were they doing? What do you think they were doing?
Drinking coffee.
No, they weren't drinking coffee.
Have a sing along.
They were doing their job. They were doing what they do. They were focusing on their job. There's the nurses' station. Lined up here in 7 wheelchairs are people. And I'm guessing they're waiting to be seen by doctor, social worker. Nobody in the time that I was there engaged with them, acknowledged them, recognised them, communicated with them, because everybody was busy doing tasks. Everybody was focused on their job, writing notes, pushing trolleys, making beds. There was one particular woman who looked so sad and so miserable and so upset. And when you sit down and just talk to these people, then they'll come alive. And they smile at them and they'll smile back. talk to them, they'll talk back. But they were just thinking, no, they were invisible. They were invisible people. They didn't exist. Because everything was task-oriented. Everything was, I've got to do this job, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. And what do we do? Whose responsibility is it to do stuff around the house, the home?
I was.
Yeah, everybody looks in, don't they? Engage with them. If you've got a bed to make your bed, and I'll help you make your bed. Just engaging with people and encouraging them to carry on living their life. I mean, we shouldn't be taking over. We shouldn't be taking control of somebody's life. We should be supporting them as much as possible to maintain as much identity as they can. Because one of the big things that dementia does to people is strips them of their identity. And everybody in this room has a role to play in life. Whether you're a mother, a son, a daughter, a husband, a wife, a lover, a caregiver, a teacher, a doctor, a nurse. Whatever you are, you have a role to play in life. And if that role is taken away from you, if you are stripped of that role and stripped of that identity, what does that feel like?
What have you got left?
Right. Yeah. So those are two things, where I live, out in Arizona, that everybody has to have a car. You can't catch a bus anywhere or a train. There are no trains. You have to drive to wherever you're going. And a lot of people have two jobs. One, to live, and two, to pay medical insurance. So a lot of people have a second job. So imagine the impact that has on people if now you can't work and I'm taking away your driver's license. The impact that has on people in that community is devastating. It's massive. And it's massive for anybody, isn't it, when you start losing your role and your identity. So we have to make as much use of all our resources to ensure that people maintain that sense of identity and their roles in life. Yeah. So that's it. That's me. Have you got any questions?
Amazing. Good.
Very good.
Very good.
Do you have anybody got any questions about anything? I think I've got maybe 1 minute.
Any questions, guys and gals?
Right, well, I have a book that's recently been published. If anybody wants to get one, they can pick up a Jessica Kingsley flyer there and get a discounted price on it. If anybody wants one, take that, and when you buy it, put the code in.
I got one question. What's your tip on life?
What's
your tip on life?
my tip on life?
Yeah.
Well, keep smiling. Always be happy.
Awesome.
Yeah. Tell a joke. Every day, think of something funny.
Excellent.
Or dress funny. One or the other. If you dress funny, it'll make you funny.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.